All right.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right, so this is kind of nice and all, but I don't really want to do this 9 times, being the lazy person that I am. And it turns out with all these J buttons, I don't have to. What I can do instead is I can create a grid of these things and just automatically put them in. So let's see. So I'm going to create an array of J buttons. Actually, I want a 2-dimensional array of J buttons, don't I? So just like we did with the integers, you can create a grid of any kind of object. Actually, now that I think about this, I think I'm going to probably have to change the name of this. I think I'm going to create an int 2-dimensional int array, which I'm going to call grid, which is going to be 3 by 3. I think I'm going to name this guy buttons. Notice that if you use the same name twice, it complains about that. Java's smart about it. So I'm going to create an array of buttons, which is the thing I'm going to actually see. And then I'm going to use my same sort of int array I used in our previous project to actually keep track of whether or not X or O is there.
Is there a space in between those open and closed bars and buttons and grids?
There is. Now, one thing that you need to know about an array of objects, so I've set aside space for 9 different J buttons, but I haven't actually made them yet. It's basically setting aside memory slots for those. But if I try and actually see what's in the 0, 0 slot of a J button, that's going to be problematic. So, just to show you what I mean, let's take a look at the text. So I want to look at the 0, 0 button. And you can get the label on it by saying get text. Let's see what that does. Oh, I got an error. Java Lang null pointer exception. A null pointer is what an object is by default. So if you don't create a new J button, it's pointing to the magical place called null. Think of it like a whole other world that you're not allowed to touch anything. So because this thing hasn't been created, the 0, 0 button, there's room for it. There's a null pointer sitting there waiting for a new J button, but there isn't actually a button there. If I, just to prove to you that it actually, get text will work if you have a text there. If I say first.getText down here, it's fine with that. So you can grab the label off of something. So what we actually need to do is we need to create all of these buttons inside this array before we use it. Fortunately, an easy way to do this is to use a for loop. By the way, notice that you can hit control space with a for loop as well and have it fill it in automatically. Now I have to say what the length is, but this is the idea. If I do it again, does it allow me to do it? It does. It even changed it to a J. Awesome.
Is there a reason I can't get first? I can't get text first.
Wait, so we press control space after we type the 4?
That's correct.
And then
It
iterate over array.
What am I looking for?
Iterate over the array. All right. So now that I have this for loop, it's doing I and j, is what it filled in automatically. What I should do is I should actually create at I and j a new J button. And just to make sure that I have everything filled in right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to print out I and J. Now, since J is the inner loop, that's the one that's going across, so I actually want that first. I is the columns. So that creates the new J button. I still need to add it to my frame, though. So I'm actually going to add it to my frame. And away we go. It's another thing we'll add in eventually, but that's good for now. There we go. So this allows us to actually put in all of the coordinates and all the buttons all at once. I'm just leaving this label on here for now just to make sure that I actually did it right and I have them all. But this is the general idea. Because I made a 3x3 grid, it added them in. Notice that it went from left to right and then top to bottom. So it actually puts it in the way that you read. By the way, so just to show you what happens if I put another button in if it's only a 3x3? So if I create this extra button, add in this guy to the frame, notice that it decides, oh, you must want another column. You must have miscounted, which is not quite what we want. So when it comes to actually putting in another label and another button later on, we can't put it in a 3x3 grid and hope everything works out right. In fact, let's go ahead and get to that now. So let's say that I do want to add like a text field, a couple labels, and another button for changing names. How do I do that? Well, it turns out you can put one layout inside another layout. So for example, what I can do is I can create a border layout and put two different grid layouts inside of that. So rather than just saying that, let's actually do that. What I need to do is I need to create another container which has a different layout than the frame and put that inside.
Excuse me, did you get rid of the J button first?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Sorry, I didn't see that.
It's okay. So I'm going to create a container for the top of the screen, which is going to contain the two labels, which are going to contain wins, a text field, and a button for changing the name. I guess I'll call that north for now. Container is an AWT thing. And a container is something that can have a layout, but it doesn't really do much else. So it's kind of like a frame, except that you have to put it into something else. Most of the time, what you use a container for is setting up some sort of layout and putting things inside it. So I'm going to import this container. And then I'm going to have a different container which is going to have my playing field. All right, so this north container, what I'd like that to be is I think a 2x2 grid will work. Maybe I could just make it a flow layout, but I'll stick with something we know. So what I'd like to do is set up north. So let me label this. So this is going to be a 2x2 grid layout. And then the playing field is actually going to be exactly what the frame is right now. So that's actually going to be the 3x3 layout. The frame is actually going to change what it's going to be. And in particular, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the frame a border layout. So similar to a grid layout, border layout, you create a new border layout inside of the layout of the frame, and then get rid of the stuff in the parentheses. A border layout, it turns out, doesn't have anything in its parentheses.